All right, welcome back. If you haven't already watched part 1 of the cardiovascular system, I would recommend doing that before viewing this video. What I want us to focus on now is really looking at the pulmonary and the systemic circuit. So we went through the flow of blood. What I want us to see in this image is, remember, we're sort of dividing the heart between left and right sides. Okay, so, and that is that looking at the person. So this would be the person's left and the person's right. So this is the left side of the heart here. And notice the left side of the heart is shown in red because that's oxygenated blood. And the left side of the heart is the systemic circuit. Okay, that is the part of the heart that's carrying blood to the entire body. The ventricle wall is actually thicker. The muscular ventricle wall is thicker on the left side because it has to pump blood to the entire body versus just to the lungs. Now, we also see the pulmonary circuit is coming from the right side of the heart, okay, the side that's shown in blue. And we see that the exchange, whichever circuit we're looking at, is occurring in the capillary beds. So as we see, as blood leaves the heart, whether it's coming from the left or right side, it's going to travel through an artery. And then when the exchange of gases and nutrients and waste occurs, that's always going to be in a capillary bed. So the capillary beds are represented right here, where you see the change from red to blue, right? Or blue to red. Now, there are not only 4 capillary beds. These are just representative of a capillary bed in the body. So there would be many capillary beds. Now, blood pressure is what's driving blood through the arteries. However, by the time the blood reaches the capillary bed, there's almost no blood pressure that's aiding in the blood flowing through. By the time the blood gets to the veins, their blood pressure is not what's moving the blood back to the heart. In fact, in the veins, it's actually muscle contractions against those veins, so between 2 muscles or between a muscle and a bone, that contracts and pushes the blood back through the vein. And there are also valves inside of veins that prevent the backflow of blood. So blood is flowing through our body differently depending on if we're talking about arteries or veins. But just keep in mind that the only site for exchange of gases and nutrients is occurring in the capillary beds. Now, I want to switch gears and talk about the actual muscle contractions or the cycle of contractions in the heart. It's called the cardiac cycle. There's 2 terms I want you to be familiar with. So the first is systole, and that means contraction. And the second is diastole, which means a point of relaxation. Now, there's an important area of the heart that's called the sinoatrial or SA node. And that's essentially the internal pacemaker. In other words, this is not the kind of pacemaker that you would have put in artificially. This is a naturally occurring pacemaker for the heart's contractions. It's located in the right atrium, and it's electrical signals that occur that actually tell the cardiac cells that give them signals to contract. And so the electrical signal initiates in this SA node, and the atria then are going to receive the signal first. Both atria are going to contract at the same time. When they do, the blood will move from the atria into the ventricles. And then that electrical signal will reach the ventricles. They'll contract, and that will move blood out of the ventricles. So if we're talking about the left side, that will move blood out through the aorta. If we're talking about the right side, it will move blood out through the pulmonary trunk. Now, if you've ever listened to a heartbeat or heard it, on a video, it kind of has that lub-dub sound. The actual sound that you're hearing when you listen with a stethoscope is the sound of the valves closing. So the first part of the heartbeat is the closing of what we call atrioventricular valve. So let's take that apart. Basically, what we're saying is the valve between the atria and the ventricles. So that would be, depending if we're talking about the left side or the right side. The left side, it would be the bicuspid or mitral valve, and on the right side, it would be the tricuspid. So as those close, that's the first sound of the heartbeat. The second sound of the heartbeat is the closing of the semilunar valve. So this would be the aortic valve between the ventricle and the aorta, and the pulmonic valve between the right ventricle and the pulmonary trunk. So this image shows us the cardiac cycle, and you can see that the SA node is identified right here as on the right atrium. And in this first image, letter A, what we see is the heart is at rest. So it's diastole for all chambers. And what we can see is blood is flowing in. So this would be the superior vena cava, and this would be the inferior vena cava. And we see that while the heart is relaxed, blood is flowing through those, right? The veins have collected in the superior and inferior vena cava, and it's filling that right atrium. Now you'll see that there is some blood flow already occurring between the atrium, the right atrium and right ventricle, and again, left atrium, left ventricle. Once the SA node sends the signal, the atria receive the signal first and contract, and that forces the remainder of the blood from the atria into the ventricles. Then we have the atria will be at rest. So they have a diastole, whereas the ventricles will be at systole and they will contract. And when that happens, then the blood will be forced, so on the right side of the heart through the pulmonary trunk, and the left side of the heart up through the aorta. Now, I mentioned to you the difference a little bit between arteries, veins, and capillaries, but let's make sure we cover this. So we have artery pictured on the left and vein pictured on the right. A couple of things I want to point out to you. You don't need to worry about all of the terminology in this image, except I want you to know and remember that only veins have valves. And I want you to know in general that arteries are going to have more smooth muscle, okay, and connective tissue than the veins. That's because there's more blood pressure that's exerted on those arteries. Veins don't encounter blood pressure. Blood actually moves through the veins, remember I mentioned, as either two muscles contract and squeeze against that vein, or a muscle contracts against a bone or something else. And then valves are there to keep the blood from flowing back, okay? Now, capillaries are not pictured in this image. What I want you to know about capillaries are they're very, very thin-walled, because what's happening at the level of the capillary, that's when all the exchange is occurring between what's inside the blood vessels and the tissues of the body. So the walls need to be thin enough so that gases and nutrients and waste can diffuse back and forth across the capillary wall. Now, at this point, what I would like you to do is sketch a rough version of this heart, okay? Not while you're looking at the picture. So get an idea, right? You're going to sketch. It doesn't have to be this detailed. You know, you can even just sketch it so you have sort of a right side and you have a left side, okay? And you cut those into four different, oops, I drew that a little. Let's make that a little more correct here. Let's make the atria smaller, okay? So we have our 4 chambers, and then see if you can label those chambers. See if you can draw where the pulmonary trunk would leave, which chamber it would exit, the aorta, which chamber it would exit. Then try to color with colored pencils or Crayolas or whatever you have, or just indicate the color based on whether or not blood in that chamber or in that vessel would be oxygenated or deoxygenated. I can even provide for you in the class a coloring page that just doesn't have the labels if you'd rather do that than draw it by hand,